Hi guys, welcome to the Revive Stronger podcast. It's me, Steve Hall, as always, and today I am joined by Alberto Nunez. So I think all of our audience will be aware of Alberto, obviously a natural bodybuilder, pro bodybuilder from 3D Muscle Journey, and I'm very glad to have Alberto back on the show. It's been a while. How's everything going on your end? I know it's a bit of a funny time at the moment. This will come out probably later down the line where hopefully things have cleared up a bit, but still let us know how things are on your end, Alberto.
Man, like everyone else, like there's this is a hard sport, and it's a hard sport, but this is like way harder than everyone was ready for, and obviously, like, you know, stormy ocean training in a way is kind of an anchor for a lot of us right now. So between training and actually working, that's what you asked me. You're like, hey bro, do you got time? I'm like, bro, I got time, because like literally, like the escape has been, hey, let's get a little bit of training in, or let's sit down and see if anyone needs anything, you know. So no, that's been what's keeping me solid and centered right now, and like everyone else, just waiting to see where this goes, man, because it's a little bit more predictable now, but for a minute there was like every day it's like, all right, tell me what's going on today, you know. So yeah, we're just hanging on like everyone else, man, but we're hanging on.
Very, very selfishly, as a bodybuilder, and probably I think a lot of the audience will be able to relate to this, I was just kind of like each day looking, when's the gym gonna shut? Is the gym shut yet? I was just continuously like, wait, it's gonna shut, isn't it? Have you invested in any home gym equipment, like just in case it prolongs, or are you making do with what you've got?
No, I think a big part of it is that, first of all, I think at this point you can't, like, everything's on like back order here. Yeah. You know? But I felt there's a good chunk of my athletes that's just not an option. Yeah. So I guess, like, I feel bad if for some reason, like, I was able to get something in here next week. It's like, it's got almost everything I need. And there they are, and I'm telling them like, hey bro, it's going to be cool. So I'm like, you know what? I'll hang on to what I have, which I still think is plenty. I appreciate what I do have. And working with that, and really all I have is I have a 35-pound kettlebell. I have bands that were for like pump up backstage, not for training. They were for pump up. I've
got the same ones.
and the TRX, which is that's quite useful. And then some old knee wraps that I've been using for BFR. Awesome. And that's what I have, and it's been not the most enjoyable training, but you sure are proud when you're done with one of those. Yeah. So.
No, your setup sounds very familiar to what mine was until I eventually got my stuff that's come through. But it was nice. I'm glad, like the same for you. I'm glad I did a couple of weeks of very minimal like equipment training, because it gave me a lot of perspective and allowed me to feel what my clients are feeling. And like, I didn't have any equipment for my last like leg training session. My quads, I did something stupid to them because they're still really under recovered. So it just surprised me. It shouldn't surprise you really, because you know the principles and you know how to apply them. But when you're really taken out of your environment that is the gym and just everything works, it gets a bit clunky. Like you said, it's a bit awkward trying to set it up, but once you got it down, then you can run with it. So yeah, I respect that you've just decided, I'm going to put myself in my client's shoes and just run with that. And yeah, we're still going to progress. We're going to come out of this probably better, hopefully better than ever. I think most people will if they keep going.
Yeah, she loves you, man, because she lets you keep that in the bedroom, it seems like.
Is the spare bedroom. It looks like people think it's like our main bedroom. There is a bed in here. This has become my office, gym, spare bedroom.
Okay. I was like, Steve got the love of his lives, like right there in the same room. How awesome is that?
Just wake up and squat. Just jump out of bed.
Yeah. Yeah, man. It's I guess I've compared it to eating a pint of ice cream with a fork. You know, it's like, look, it's not the best tool, but we're getting through the whole thing. So yeah, and like you, lots of soreness. But you know what? I was really, one thing about this is it really it's going to help people, like, because like for us, like almost right away, it's like you understand the principles, like to the core, and you're like, all right, this is how I'm gonna go about like pursuing that, and you can get quite crafty. But I think for a lot of people, this is like really gonna double check their work, and it's a great educational experience for sure.
Yeah. No, I completely agree. Awesome. So we'll jump into the Q&A because we have a lot of questions. I want to make sure I get to everyone's or as many as possible. And the first one is from Andrew Pottercheck, and he has asked, is the pump and that burn feeling blood pushed into the muscle or just fibers being fucked up? Also, have you tried getting to the state, then holding the squeeze until you just want to cry for the pump and burn?
Okay. Man,
if that made sense.
I get what he's trying to say. Okay. So yeah, I think there's going to be certain exercises where I think you almost have to pursue like that localized fatigue, like, and that's going to be the isos, I think a lot of the big compounds, sometimes you don't necessarily feel them all the way. Like the heavier it gets and the more skilled I get on a lift, I think the less I feel them. And as it is, I try to focus a little bit more so on like the joint angles and actions. So when I look at my good morning and I'm doing it, like that's really the only thing I'm looking at when I'm looking at the footage. I'm like, okay, so where's my knee relative to my hip? Where is my upper back relative to my hip? And that's what I'm focusing on. Whereas like on a curl, unless it's super bad, you're not really going to see too much variation from rep to rep. There's not going to be a whole lot of a essay to write about as you break down the footage. So on those, I think internal cueing is great. I used to be a hater of the mind-muscle connection, man. I'm like, coming from an athlete's background, I was like, just move right. But then I stopped and I thought about it, and this was Jeff Nippert actually. Like he at some point he brought up the point that, like, how we flex our legs in comp, like you can literally like flex more here, flex more there. You have all this control over your musculature, and that's just something that you get over time. So I'm like, okay, I can see how you can kind of redistribute the tension. I think a little bit more than I used to give people credit for, and I mean, shoot, not only that, but like this kind of relative, it's relevant given the situation right now. Yeah. Like a lot of those old school, like like 1920s, like bodybuilders, like a big part of their training was just that. It was like muscle control isometric. So, you should feel, I think on isos, like it clears up over time. You just become a little bit more fatigue resistant, but you should be feeling the targeted muscle group, and it should eventually get a pump. But not so much on the big compounds. I think if anything, you could make something dangerous by doing that.
Perfect. Yeah, completely agree. I see very much the same. And my appreciation for the mind-muscle connection really came later into things. Probably not necessarily a bad thing where you focus on technique properly initially and then mind-muscle connection comes in later. But yeah, like now you're saying like you have to feel some things out because the equipment isn't so obvious, so you have to make sure you're feeling it. So the next question from Jason Lay, similar kind of thought of lines. He's asked, clusters, drop sets, rest pause, can these replace traditional weight, i.e. they are more time efficient, so if muscle is needing to adapt to a stress, be it load with rest, etc., the traditional approach, or adapt with slightly lighter load and less rest, thus a similar stress? What are your experience of this? And he said, P.S. love the vlogs from 3DMJ.
Hey. Krieger has some really good stuff on drop sets, by the way. Both written and his own experiences with it. So definitely something to check out. So with you know where I think they really come in handy is so I'm gonna compare this to like some other sport. Like I love basketball, which I'm missing severely right now. And one thing you'll see is like guys get older is that sometimes like they're pretty effective, but the amount of minutes they can play any given night kind of like shrinks down. So their overall like load, or they're not allowed to, get as many miles in. And I think that's what those type of training techniques do for a lot of people. It's like, I think that's where it comes most in handy. That's where I use them the most on my people. It's like, oh, okay, so you've been training for like 15, 20, 25 years. If we can get the same stimulus, but expose you a little bit less, that, because there's less overall reps. And at a certain point, it's like, it does get to the point where every rep does matters, cutting out a few here and there can really help things over the long term. So I like it for that. I like it for aging athletes. If you want to be time efficient, a big reason that I was using myoreps actually earlier, well, actually this was last year, good chunk of last year, was because I just was simply not enjoying my training. I was training 4 days a week, and 4 days a week, and almost all my ISOs, anything outside of the big compounds, was where I will not recommend myos, was being done in that fashion, because I just wasn't digging my training. So yeah, I think it's virtually can be the same thing. You definitely still need to track your training, and you can definitely do that. Like, I think that's one question I'd get about those. It's like, so how do I track it? It's like, well, like anything else. It's like, what did you do compared to anyhow? They all those options are, they work. But I guess they're not essential, but at the same time, look, they're not going to stop you from maximizing yourself either. It's an option.
Yeah, the only issue I've ever had with tracking something like myoreps is making sure that I log it in time, as in the rest periods are quite short. That's when I normally log it. And so sometimes I'm like, oh, wait, I just get lazy, and then I'm like, oh, I did this many sets of roughly this reps. That's normally the thing that gets me.
I forget my cluster sequences. I'm like, okay, so it was like 7, 5. Oh, yeah. So yeah, it's a little trickier because you're caught up in the moment. You extended that set and you're like, what did I do again? Yeah.
Awesome. So we have a question from Patrick James Barney, and he has asked, Alberto often talks about getting to a place in his off season where his progress is predictable. My question is, has that body weight changed over time that he has noticed as a result of maybe increased lean body mass?
Okay. Absolutely, man. And it kind of goes to show you just how much you can convince yourself of like some pretty wacky stuff. There was a time when, like, if I was under 200 pounds, this was like early years, like power bulking. I'm like, I'm so weak. I am so puny. I feel depleted. I am about to faint. Like that's like I refuse to. I felt like I was dressed poorly for the gym if I was like below that body weight. So yeah. Like again, that's kind of an example because that was all in my head, I guess. So I do think that as time goes on, it just gets easier, and I think especially from. Because I think for most people, they have a genuine interest in like making their top end off season body weights, I guess, leaner, which not leaner. Like, for example, you hit some body weights this year that were like greater than anything else like you had ever hit before, and they look better than some of your previous like highs, right?
Yeah.
So I agree. Like that's how it should be. But we'll say, Steve, like 10 years from now, right? Like you're probably not going to be adding like
don't say it
slabs and slabs and slabs. Hey, when you get to that point though, every ounce you add looks like holy shit, right? So yeah, I think it'll become easier to I think keep a leaner version of you running around, because your habits just get so much better. Like that's kind of my issue now. And like when I really stop and think about like, yeah, I'm kind of weight gain resistant, but at the same time, it's like I have really good habits because I've been doing this for a long time. And yeah. So yeah, your off season, your top end weights, I think over time they're going to get leaner, and a lot of that is behavioral, because the main issue with most people when they start gaining is that they blow their load too early, man. Like it's like 3 months and they're like, okay, I'm too fat, like I need to go back, and eventually you kind of learn to like spread that out a little bit more. So yeah, it'll get better. You have an easier time monitoring and controlling that, and part of it is appreciating data collection, and the other part is going to be just you behaving better.
Yeah, I've had, like you said, the same has been true for myself, and a lot of it is you don't even necessarily notice that you're picking up those behaviors. It's just day to day, you're just doing the right things because that's what you do. It's just habitual.
Yeah, like eating to be full, it's like full. It's like, that's so unappealing, you know? Right? And like you eventually learn what real hunger is, you know? Like it's crazy to be in tune that way, you know? But yeah, it's something that took a while.
It took me, I almost had to backscale some of the habit. Oh, I guess like you said, like you're almost weight resistant because some of the habits are now, they're stopping you being able to gain weight. And it was weird. Like, I was like, wow, I'm really having to like be lazy. It's like, I don't know, don't take the stairs. I have to just take the lift and escalator everywhere. Really? But sometimes you have to go there.
Yeah.
Awesome. The next question is from Muffins Pitisax, and he has asked, how often do you evaluate and reset exercises for yourself and your clients? And he gave an example. For example, at the beginning of the year, I was leg pressing 300 kilos and progressing well, but I began letting small bad habits slip in, such as shortening range of motion each rep. After evaluating my videos of form and being honest, I decided to reset and drop the weight back to 200 kilos. By doing so, my ego certainly took a hit, but I was able to remove the bad habits, drastically increase my range of motion. Load was controlled better, gained more stimulus in the quads, and had less fatigue generated. So yeah, how often do you have to reevaluate and reset for yourself and clients?
Hi guys, Steve here. Just wanted to take a moment of your time to remind you of the Revive Stronger member site. Inside, you'll find a thriving forum, a growing exercise library, presentations, research reviews, and courses. If you want to get involved, sign up via the description.
So yeah, initially I thought he meant, you know, rotating movements, but this is more so like those aha moments, you know, right, where you like, man, I mean, I think the first few times I recorded myself, I was leg pressing. This was back when you had to bring a camera to the gym that was the size of like my current laptop.
Yeah.
And I was so pumped because there were so many plates on that thing. I'm like, I can't wait to like just throw this up on the YouTubes, which was around at the time. And I remember looking at it and I was just so disappointed. So I was so bad. So that will happen less and less. And I think, again, that's why like it's probably in your best interest to learn to do movements like within what you know, like the right way, you know, from the get-go. But we're always going to learn something. Like I think after this this fiasco is over, when I get back to the gym, I am going to actually relearn a few things about bracing. And one of my former clients and world-class powerlifters, Sean Noriega, is going to help me like actually brace the way I want to brace. So for a minute there's going to be a hit on my loads are going to take a bit of a hit, but again, I think it happens to everyone. It will happen way less frequently, and hardly ever will like I don't expect to see like a 1/3 of a load decrease on my squat, but it's probably going to be somewhere around 10 to 15%. And that's just because you're nailing it a little bit more and more every time. But I mean, you'd agree, like for example, like with when you introduce especially a new big movement, like there's probably as you run it through a few blocks, you probably have to, you know, there's things that you're changing and updating as you go, and a lot of those things are just individual. Like a lot of those things aren't even because, you know, you didn't put in the research. It's just more so because that's just how you figured out it's going to look best on you, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 100%. I just can think back to one I recently did was like high bar squatting. I was high bar squatting and slowly using a bit too much of the bounce, and my hips and knees were starting to feel it. And I was like, I need to reset this. And the amount I had to take down was, like a good, like maybe 20%. And I was like, whoa. But then we're bodybuilders. And so the load, like you take an ego hit, but your body responds better to it. So yeah, I think it's something I have to continue. And I think this is great why we have like phones, we can monitor things easily, our form. Being ignorant to that is not blissful at all. Most people probably know it if they're not actually performing the lift right. If they're just feeling wrecked and not like the muscle feels wrecked, it's not a good sign.
And it makes you sometimes like you're actually glad that you had to lower the load. You're like, oh yeah, I'm just becoming more efficient, like less cost of doing business here.
Yeah.
Like that's the attitude you begin to take. So no, it happens to all of us, man. And I got a squat to fix when I get back.
Awesome. Cool. So the next question is from Brett Freeman. He has asked, what have you done differently this off season compared to others? What lessons have you learned in this current off season?
This dude needs to hit up my DMs, man. I DM'd this dude. And
different Brett Freeman, I think.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, there's two running around.
This isn't world champion Brett Freeman.
No.
Okay.
So not yet anyway. You might, I don't know. Brett's thinking about the stage,
Freeman,
I think.
Let's see. What have I done different? That's always something that I do ask myself at the end of every year, It's like, okay, so what have you learned? And I'd say, probably one this year is that, and this is just, I guess it's going towards me and my personal, my approach to my own off season. I think even with advanced athletes, like having a surplus up until the point that it's like it's obvious and it's kind of chronic and like bioavailable energies on your side, I think is just makes things like, again, so much more predictable. So running kind of these ambiguous intakes where it's too much of a hybrid of like maintenance and surplus, it just doesn't do me as well as when it's like, this is clearly like a surplus, because I can see myself every 2-3 weeks, like, okay, you got a little fatter there, but look back at your training, it's been just on fire. So that's probably been I think the biggest one is it. And sometimes, talking about habits earlier, it's like sometimes it's like, all right, like, you're going to need a little bit more, or, you're going to eat when you really don't want to eat. And every cell in your body is telling you like, no, we're good. So that's been, I think, the biggest one. And kind of playing off something I said earlier is, and I get reminded of this because I fall into these every few years. There's just times where I don't like my training. Like I don't enjoy training. But man, those phases, like they make or break you, because, and this might actually, it makes sense given the way a lot of people are having to train. Like whenever I look back at the progress that I've made during those blocks when I was not very motivated, just wasn't my favorite time of the day. It's like, that's the stuff I'm most proud of, because it's like, okay, like we were able to do something, given the situation. It just, in terms of athlete confidence, man, does it really put you in a good place. So yeah, I guess this last offseason, there was a few segments where I just was not totally in love with my training, and like pushing it and making things happen. Yeah, I don't regret that one bit. And now that things are really good, and actually right now I'm extra missing the gym. Like now that when I get back in there, it's like, okay, it's like I guess it's just good to know that you can make it happen, like regardless of the weather.
I think that's awesome. I really like that second point, particularly because I think right now, particularly, it's easy for people to kind of give up. And I've even had like clients who are not feeling it, and I'm like, this is like, you can capitalize on this period of time, or you can let it make you like regress if you want to. But like you said, like you can, even when it's that consistency just throughout, even if you're not enjoying it, like adhering, doing the process, like you're still going to see things happen. And that's what makes the best. That's why you're such a good bodybuilder, because it's a long man's sport. Like the people who adhere to it for the longest period of time are going to see the best.
Yeah. And I mean, that's what we get from preps. You know, it's kind of the same way.
Yeah.
You know, and how empowering is that? And you think about it when you're deep into prep, you're like, man, once I get some food in me, it's game over, man.
Yeah.
You know? So yeah, hang in there, folks. Hang in there.
Awesome. So actually related to that question, Joseph Kaufman asked, do more advanced natural bodybuilders sometimes need to enter larger caloric surpluses rather than a moderate one in order to see good amounts of muscle?
You know, that's hard. I'd say that it's just growth is so hard to come by that I would much rather have just an environment that is like conducive to growth. Should your body like decide like I'm going to grow, so you know, everything we want, it's well, the muscle gains that we want, it's like in our own heads, it's almost like the way we see it is like is not necessarily the way like our body sees it, because there's so many things that like your body does every day that like you don't even like fully appreciate or you're not aware of. It's like, hey, when you have an apple, it's like you eat it and like your body like all the right amounts of like this enzyme, that enzyme, it throws it. So there's all these things that it's doing, and that's why like growth is sporadic and weird sometimes. So I think it just makes sense to make sure that should your body decide like, hey, you know, let's put on some muscle, like we can get to that now, that the funds are there.
Yeah. Because
yeah, like sometimes the way training is, it's just like you're picking, and nothing's happening, and then like holy crap, major breakthrough. So yeah, be ready. Should your body decide like, yeah, okay, we can get into that today.
I mean, that is something I felt a lot with, because the analogy I always think of is muscle gain is like cycling uphill. It's just a process that is not particularly easy, and you want to make it as easy as possible. So being in a decent surplus, like you've said, make a predictable environment for growth is going to make that process probably a bit easier, whereas fat loss is super easy. And typically I use the two, like it's like cycling downhill versus cycling uphill. I use the two there for the bodybuilders who are a bit nervous to be in that decent surplus, who are kind of like they're trying to do the really lean gaining where they're barely seeing the scale move.
I like that, the downhill for fat loss, because once you get fat loss, like with more than anything, it's just like kind of hugging the brake a little bit, like just tapping it, like, because you can go really fast with fat loss, but obviously there's consequences. So it's like it's dangerous. So keep that hand on the brake and maybe tap it a few times.
I like you've moved the analogy even further. I like that. Awesome. So we'll get to the next question, which is from Warren Mitchell. He said, what would Berto's thoughts be on cycling volume into mesocycle for maximal hypertrophy? Something he could get on board with, or does he believe static volume within mesocycle purely with a traditional overload modality is the way to go?
I think the cycling is something that I do a little bit more with the big lifts. And it's both ways. Like sometimes I'll ramp them up, sometimes I'll ramp it down. Kind of just depends on what has worked the best for that individual. Like when you look at the kings of the compounds, like the raw power lifters, like there's people that kind of do it both ways. Like there really isn't this. It's like front loading, back loading, you know? With the ISOs, I tend to run those a little bit more static because they don't leave as big of a dent. So I'd say when it comes to, like me personally, I like to ramp up. Starting heavy, like, and then kind of bring up intensity as like the amount of sets go down. It doesn't work as well for me. It mentally doesn't work as well for me. Physically doesn't work as well for me. But there's some people out there that just like, that's how you do it. So yeah, I think with the compounds, you gonna have to get a little bit more sophisticated and kind of wave both the intensity and the I guess the volume, but I don't think there's necessarily a better way to be honest. I've seen people just do really well with both variations, and even the static folks. But obviously, if you're doing something static, it's like this is kind of your threshold, and you need to give it a good amount of respect, and there needs to be a good little buffer there. So I think sometimes it's like playing it safe, but yeah, you're playing it safe, so you're not getting as much in return potentially. That might add up over time, but again, it's a safe gamble, I guess.
Yeah, I think it's whenever I think of the question, it's one of those questions we don't know the answer yet, and it seems many things seem to work. So like you've said, trial and error, see kind of what you enjoy is probably quite important, and then see what brings results for you. And probably if you're in that range of the sets that people generally talk about for hypertrophy, like 10 to 20, you're probably good, and play with it a little bit now and then.
So much of it is getting your hands dirty,
Yeah, awesome. So the next question is from Billy Ryan. So I don't know if you remember Billy Ryan. He says, miss you, Berto. He and Helms were calling the shots on my prep in 2011. And he's looking really good, actually. He recently posted some pictures in our group. I don't know if you saw them. But yeah, so Billy. He's asked, seeing as Berto has committed to this longer-term massing phase, where he is at a much higher weight than he has pushed in previous off seasons, has he already begun to see the fruits of his labors? Also, now that the virus that shall not be named situation has arisen, how does this change his future plans in terms of how long he is going to push/hold his higher body weight?
Have I seen it? Man, so much of it is I still have to go by performance metrics, like above anything else. So that all has been just, yeah, it's been really good. It's funny. It's like not the best one for growth, but one of like my favorite ways, and I'll do it every once in a while for funds, is I feel it's like if you have your technique down, is like the deadlift. Like it's just like, look, nothing's really being like stretched out and pushed through its full range, but it's like, are you a bigger, stronger person?
Yeah.
And if that's gone up, then hey, you probably are. So every once in a while, it's like, you know what, I don't feel like doing good mornings today. I'm just gonna go see where that is at. It's funny. So like Dan John, one of my favorite coaches ever, his like 3 skills that he would encourages people to take part in to see if you're progressing is a dead hang, I think, pull up, the standing broad jump, and then the deadlift. So those are the big 3. And if like those improved, it's like, hey, chances are, we're getting what we want out of our training. And for me, the deadlift is kind of that. So yes, performance has gone up. I'm not saying people should do that, but yeah, performance has definitely improved. There's spots. I think that's kind of how, like, this is the first time ever when I don't have like my quads fully extended. Like I have striations in like my outer quads. So it's like, it's literally spots. Like that's what you have to, it's like when I'm in like I've never had vascularity in the sides of my delts, and like it's not poking through the skin, but like when I look in the mirror, it's like, oh wow, okay, yeah, this is all going to be crawling. Like if I lose like 12 pounds. So yeah, it's spotty, but yes, I do think it's working. And then I guess his other question was what I plan to do with myself right now.
Yeah.
I want to make gains because it's to me it's just the spirit of the whole thing. So I am definitely still eating at a surplus, and in fact, it's been easier since I'm not moving nearly as much. I train at a big gym, so when I finish a set, I make myself walk all the way to the furthest water fountain because sometimes I get in there a little bit earlier than I should. So do that, bug a few people, go talk to people, and then get back to my set. And that adds up to be quite a lot. Like whenever I have used the step count thing, it's like I'll get like 3,000 steps in the gym because of that. So yeah, gaining weight has been happening. I think I can still make progress given the sort of training I am having to take part in right now. It's not fun. Like, with regular training, it's like sometimes I'm like, you know what? I'll just leave this thing that I want to do till after the gym because I got to go take care of myself, and I'm excited to do that. Whereas like with this, it's like, oh man, I have to train and I have to get into it, and then finally it's like, okay, like now I caught my rhythm, and I'm proud of myself for actually starting it up, even though it was hard. So no, we're still gonna make progress, and I almost see this phase as this is something that it's hard to convince ambitious bodybuilders to do. But I think these like rejuvenation phases are not necessarily a bad thing, because not everything structurally that is kind of being pushed to its limits, it's in question. Do you always feel like, how it goes with pain? It's like pain's a funny thing. It's a complicated thing. But you could have these like these little internal governors just spotty all over your body that might be preventing you from getting the most out of yourself. So sometimes phases like this where they're totally different, they're actually kind of easy, it might put you in a better place 6-8 months from now. Like I see it all the time with powerlifters. Like they get hurt, they literally can't do anything for 2 months, and sometimes they can only bench, whatever. But then they come back, and all that progress that they were just picking away at, it just wouldn't happen. All of a sudden just comes in a rush, and they're back to where they were. Obviously that happens quick, but then that old plateau, they just burst through it. And immediately what comes to mind for me is like, oh, there was something there that was stopping you from getting what you wanted from your training. And I think a lot of that was cleared up during that chillaxing phase. So a lot of us have to do, like, we have no choice. We have to like take that chillaxing phase. And I think it's going, I think people are going to see that, and maybe people will keep some sort of variants of this in their like yearly training. I hope.
I think I remember you saying, I think you guys at 3DMJ did a podcast on this. And I think you said that you were considering at one point just to be like, I'm just not going to train for 2 weeks. That's how I'm going to do it. Did you say that? Am I right in thinking that you were almost considering that sometimes, like, because you've already seen these phases benefit you before, where you just like an active recovery phase kind of?
Yeah. I was going to go just, they closed down the basketball courts, or I might have. And then I realized like, oh no, I got to do this because my people, they're not going to want to do that. So, but I legitimately wanted to work on my shot because they have a league out here, and I wanted to play in that league. So I was like, you know what? If I just do this for a full month, I'll be able to be decent and, hopefully picked up by some team. So yeah, that was my plan initially. And you know what? Like I've seen, obviously Jeff is like a ultra high responder, but I remember when Jeff had his baby, he didn't train. Like fatherhood just had him thrown for a loop. And I remember one of our meetings, he shows up, and Jeff was just like a skinny man, like just thin. And I'm like, Jeff, we're competing next year. I've always wanted to tag you on stage, but I'm not gonna. This is not good. I don't want to beat Jeff and be like, well, because of this. And then like legitimately, like we have a meeting a month later, and Jeff shows up, and he's just like big and swole again because he started training. So whatever you do lose, it's so unfair how quickly it comes back.
Yeah.
So unfair. So yeah, I was completely okay with the, hey, you know what? I won't train. I'll just play basketball and go on hikes. But I wouldn't be leading by example, I guess.
And for me, because I had similar thoughts where I was like, oh, I could just do like at least a lower volume period of time, which I cycle in now and then. It's kind of perfect. And then I was like, how long is this now going to last? And then that's that your kind of the neurotic bodybuilder in me was like, I don't know if I can commit to just not training, and then I can't start training. So yeah, I can definitely see that. And to the first, it was just when you were talking through the first question where Billy asked about have you seen the payback of this, like off season, pushing your body weight up? Because I know I've been posed the question, and I asked myself the same when I was pushing my weight up, and it was really great to hear you talk through it, even though like you've done it before and you're doing it now and you're incredibly experienced. And it's like, you don't always, like, it's hard to know. It's just, you kind of have to trust the process in a way. And for me, at least, like you said, I hit that high body weight and I've started cutting down. I was like, whoa, I'm hitting, like, I look completely different now. It's like, you don't see the kind of the dividends until you start cutting down, but you have to invest and do that and delay that.
Yeah. If you see a few things on the way up, you know what, chances are it's really good.
Yeah.
Because some of my best off seasons, it's kind of been like I get to my high end body weight, I'm like, nothing's happening. And then I got cut down and I'm like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
So I take little things that do show up on the way up is like, okay, like that is probably more than I should be pleased with what's going on.
Awesome.
But yeah, everyone deals with that, man, that mind game.
Yeah. Cool. So the next question is from Igor Korea, and he has asked, do you monitor blood work with your athletes? And if you do, what looks different between an off season and a prolonged cut?
No. I usually don't. The only time where that might be something we look into is if they show up with something being off, and obviously we send them to our RD, Steve Taylor, and he takes care of that part. But I think what I have done is if someone, especially, you know, like with the hormones and prepping, if someone wants to get like a snapshot of what they look like when things are good, and then get one like, you know, after prep, probably. Don't do it when you're 4 weeks out. It's going to freak you out.
Yeah.
And then, you know, like get one later on when we think we're making some good progress, or maybe we think we're not making enough progress when it comes to that. So those are probably the three places where just like that simple one, like looking at the hormonal stuff is something that's like, hey, you know, you have the means and you want to, and you know, yeah, that would be useful. Yeah. But the other stuff, it's like, no, I'll send that to Steve. He's that's his business. But yeah, I think that one, like kind of knowing where your baselines are at, I think it's not necessarily a bad thing, and you don't have to, because when you're normal, like, you know, when you're normal, when you're back to, like, you know, but yeah, definitely not a waste of time, not like a DEXA scan or something where. I just had an athlete like who literally made all sorts of like fantastic progress. Like,
oh no,
come to me with like, they're like, but my DEXA said I lost like 4 pounds of muscle, and I'm like, no, like, yeah.
I was actually, and on a related note, I guess, is there any kind of I guess with your athletes, any I don't know, free markers isn't the word to use, but like any markers that you are tracking to make sure that things are normal and things are ticking along in the direction you want them to?
Hey, Pascal here. I just quickly wanted to remind you of our online coaching service. At Revive Stronger, we put a huge emphasis on the personal aspect of our coaching. And if you want to take your physique and knowledge to the next level, hit the link in the description below.
Hormonally?
Just like, I guess it might encompass hormones in some ways, like, I don't know, mood or something, but yeah, just general markers of like that things are good.
Okay. Just globally, health wise.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think mood is a huge one. Mood is a super huge one, and obviously all the hormonal stuff, because anyone, you know, like both genders will tell you that when things hormonally kind of go, you know, when they tank, you're not as happy of a person. You know, you're just not as chipper. So I do think just overall well-being, and honestly, I feel that, man, stress can do so much to you.
Yeah.
Just so many negative things. Like, you could be eating enough calories, your volume is right, but like if just the rest of your life is really, really pushing you like to the edge, man, it can really almost completely counter a healthy lifestyle sometimes. So that's one of the biggest variables is just kind of learning to streamline like all the other things you have to do, all the other stimulus, and like dose that right, because man, it could completely just, you could be doing everything, right? You can be eating your kiwis, you could be training with the right amount of volume, and it won't matter.
I guess it's similar. Stress and sleep, two ones that have just, to me in the last year, at least a couple of years, have just been so obvious how much of an impact they have, and how ignorant at least I was to my own in the years prior. And just now I feel like I never slept well. And when I like have slightly poor sleep, I'm like, oh my gosh, I feel awful. It's like, how did I never notice this before?
Like sleep now it's like, like sometimes you look at your footage and you're just like hypercritical of like how you're moving in the gym. I feel like it's the same way with sleep. Like I'm always my own worst critic with that. I'm like, bro, you can do better. Like, we've done better, So, but it's so worth it, man. Like like if you sleep like a champ, it's almost the other way around, right? How did I forget that one? Like if you sleep like a champ, it's like I've known people who they make really good progress, even though their training is bordering on a disaster because they're sleeping 10 hours a day.
And I guess because a lot of the things as a coach you're taking care of, with like making sure to dose volume right, you're making sure the nutrition's like wholesome and supporting their health goals, and you're managing stress, you're managing like sleep and all those aspects to a certain degree. You've got awareness of stress. The blood markers, like if they're going to be poor or if they're going to be good, kind of if you're looking at all those other things. So you almost don't necessarily need it unless something's like you're doing everything right and still someone's not feeling chipper.
Yeah, man. Oh, best sleeper I've ever experienced. Bodybuilder Ryan Doris.
Oh really? That doesn't surprise me somehow.
I've bunked with him and like he told me, he warned me. He's like, so when I say I'm about to go to sleep, I am about to go to sleep. And so I'm like, okay, whatever, dude. And so he excuses himself, and like maybe a minute later, like he's just going at it, and I'm like, you're lying to me, man. You're lying. And poke him, and I'm like, no, the man is asleep, and just like that, just sleeps whenever he wants, wherever he wants.
That's the secret to his amazing gains. It's just damn sleep. Gosh, got to learn from Ryan.
Skill. Yeah.
Awesome. We get to the next question, which is from Evan Godby. So Evan has asked, what is your favorite moment / memory from competition to this point? I.e. a memory that stands out from a show or shows that has stuck with him as being cool moment / experience.
Okay. So this is not Evan. Evan talks a little shit sometimes. So I was like, okay, he's about to start something, Yeah, that's Evan. So yeah, thank you for that one, Evan. Times like that's what we need. Well, you know what? Like with all that's been going on, like one thing that I've thought about is just how committed and tenacious I was at times in order to make this happen. And two instances like showed up like in my head. So when I first started, it was like my first year of training. I remember that, sometimes food wasn't the easiest things to come by. And like, to me, it would be a very good training day if I was able to sneak away like 2 slices of bread before I head to the gym.
Wow.
And I remember, so I'd have my breakfast, and then like we would usually train after school, and we had to ship across town basically. And I remember that if I managed to just wrap them up in foil, there'd be a ball, it'd be in my backpack. And I knew that if I had 2 slices of bread, it was going to be lights out today. And I was about to like rock it for the obnoxious 3 hours that we were there. So I go back and I'm like, man, like that kid was making it happen with scraps. And I think just like preps, it's like your best memories sometimes are like these single sets, these days where you made it happen. And honestly, that they're so personal and intimate, and it's a highlight reel that no one else would really quite understand. So that one was one. And then the other one was, since I could only make it to the gym 3 times a week, I wanted to get a 4th day in, So I needed some equipment. So I got my hands on some 40-pound dumbbells. And so I was excited to get the dumbbells, but then I'm like, oh shoot, now I have to take these back. And so I remember I walked it was 2.5 miles with one in my backpack. Backpack was barely making it, and then the other one I just kept switching off from one side to the other. But I was willing to do that to make the gains, and I think those moments where you push and you make it happen, and you see how strong you are, the kind of strong that matters. I think those are the single best moments, and that's one of the biggest appeals of prepping. Is and I always ask myself that before I prep, is man, do you really still have that in you, man? Can you? And then you do it, and you're like, holy crap! Here I am, 2 months in, and I'm prep crazy. This is great. It's been in there the whole time. So yeah, I love that part. Love the personal, intimate stuff.
And it's crazy, actually, you're reflecting on it. And for me, I always feel so ignorant to it at the time, how I really feel. And then I look back and I'm like, oh, I was crazy back then. I was doing some really strange stuff.
Yeah. I mean, shoot, man, we're here for a reason, as humans. It's because we're tenacious and we get it done. And man, prep has you explore those primal parts. It's most people don't ever really get to touch on those. So yeah, 100%. I can't wait to do it again.
I guess in a weird way, now we've all had the luxury of the gyms taken away. It's you have to, a lot of, it feels so old school just to be even just using barbells and a dumbbell. It's I'm not using any machines. I'm so, this feels old school. It's I've seen people going outside using logs and everything. And it's actually quite inspiring to see just this is bodybuilders at it, almost at its best. People are willing to go the extra mile, whereas a lot of your average gym trainers, they will just start Netflix and chilling a little bit, and that's fair. That's what they want to do. But the real tenacious bodybuilders are going to go out there and they're going to make it work no matter what, which is really cool, actually.
Yeah. I've been digging it, and at the end, all that really happened is we got our first world gravity taken away.
Yeah.
That's it, and it's everywhere, thankfully.
Yeah. Awesome. Final question. And this is, I don't know, an interesting question to finish on. This is from Tanya Miller. So Tanya has asked you, ask him to explain anxiety butt in figure posing the same way he did to me, because I cannot be the only one who was unaware.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, she was posing her glutes like a bodybuilder. So yeah, so I mean, imagine that in the figure class, where it's really, mostly silhouette.
Do they call this I think the WNBF in the UK call this the shitting dog, Yeah,
that one. Yeah. So yeah, she, and why? So it took me a while to actually finally mention it, because I'm like maybe I should, because more than anything, we were just going through this major phase to set us up for what we really needed to dive into. And I'm like, you know what? Let's start correcting this posing, because I mean, sometimes how it goes. It's you can tell how great someone looks, but they don't know. It's or sometimes, right. What's there, even though they're not showing it. So I'm like, all right, here, let me fix you up. And I fixed her up, and she's like, holy crap, I actually have normal looking glutes. And I'm like, yeah. And it wasn't that bad. She wasn't, how we pose, it's we're literally peeing over this high fence. That's but nevertheless, yeah. And I was like, yeah, it just looked like you were anxious the whole time. So that's the term anxiety. But yeah. She's going to be a hell of an athlete at some point. She already is, but she's accumulating her stuff. So Tanya, thank you for that question.
I know she works incredibly hard.
I was expecting way worse.
Yeah, I was thinking this was quite a soft question for Tanya. So it reminds me, actually, when you said posing for I've had so many guys who are my hamstrings are tiny, blah, blah, blah. And I'm just you just cannot pose. You're not shoving that rear knee into that hamstring. And then they do it and they're like, oh, I actually do have hamstrings. It's crazy how much posing can actually make a difference. And
it's crazy that you could see it, right?
Yeah.
You could see it even
It's
though
so
they're not,
obvious.
it's like they're actually dope ass hamstrings, dude.
And it's interesting talking, this is kind of, I guess, on the subject, but bodybuilders and it seems to be some people, like some organizations like the glutes tucked and other ones like them like displayed back. Do you like, is that something you're having to change for like a competitor for different federations and everything you finding?
Man, it's I think up until this point, it's like, unfortunately, the way it goes, it's like whatever's happening at the highest ranks of the IFBB is what everyone has like follows, right?
Yeah.
So when you look at like the top Mr. Olympias, it's like, what are they doing? It's like they're flexing, their glutes are they're in full hip extension. But that doesn't mean that if you've played around with a few variations, like actually, like I feel based on like how my lats attach, that when I hit a back lat spread, it doesn't impact my back double bicep really that much, but my back lat spread, if I get off the glutes, it's no longer like they're no longer being tugged, and I can spread so much more. So I think next time I compete, it's like, okay, look, the back double bicep, they'll be able to see that, oh wow, everything's etched in, and then that other one will be like, oh wow, like he's not narrow. So so yeah, customize your stuff and break the rules a little bit. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Like, man, I remember Jim Cordova, great bodybuilder, like his posing. It's like, okay, those are mandatories, yeah, but you're getting away with some stuff. That's a tactful man right there, you know.
I did some posing. I don't know. I think you'll be well aware of Andrew Chappelle. I did some posing with him, and he's like a great poser. And I think he hits some things in ways that I don't think are traditionally hit. And he draws a lot of inspiration from the old school bodybuilders. But I hit some of them and I was like, oh, that actually looks much better than how I was like traditionally hitting it. Like I see a lot of competitors hitting and how I'd always hit it. So yeah, it's just like you said there, posing for bodybuilding is one of those things it just doesn't get talked about that much. It's not sexy, but it just plays such a big role. And like even little things like just like you said, you can hit the same like back pose, but you just do one tucked, one not, and it improves how everything's looking. So yeah, I find posing interesting, whereas a lot of people don't.
Yeah, no, it matters, and especially, man, you guys got some like deep shows out there, So we have a lot of shows. You guys don't have as many, but the ones you guys have, it's like, no, you got to fight for every placing out there.
Has that actually, on that note, have you had many competitors like had their shows cancelled, or how are things running in the US because I know here, and you probably have clients who were looking to do qualifiers in like the UK, and they've all been the BNBF, UKDFBA have cancelled all qualifiers, and it's like now just finals. And I'm kind of like, I'm meant to be competing this year, and now I'm like, I don't know what I want to do. How's that been for 3DMJ clients?
Yeah, well, obviously we have a different system, and it's more so people who are doing spring shows. Yeah. It's like now you're doing summer shows, which isn't too bad, It lessens the blow in a way because you can slow things down a little bit. It's like, hey, now you got some space. Obviously, for some people, it doesn't fit their personal timeline, so that's a different issue. But but as of right now, I guess the way we're doing it, it's like, hey, things keep changing every day. Yeah. Right? So it's like, hang in there, keep doing your thing. I think in a way it's probably, good for you to hold on to that. Because I mean, shoot, I'd hate for some people anyways for them to just like jump off, and then it's that transition. It's hard anyways, but imagine like it being under these circumstances. Let's use this as a protective shield of sorts,
Yeah. Completely respect that. Awesome. Thank you so much, Alberto. We've got through every single question, so I'm really, really happy, and I'm sure the listeners have been super happy to have you on. I want to make sure like people can keep following your stuff, so I think you're probably most present still over on Instagram. Is that where you're most regularly sharing everything that's going on? You're doing your door pull-ups, which I saw Eric got blasted for a little bit. I tried them. I was very impressed. I think they're actually harder than normal pull-ups.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, yeah, we did that publicly.
I shared it on my story, so I got tagged in Eric's post quite a lot. I was like, oh no, people are breaking their doors.
But no, Instagram is it's still the place where I roam the most.
Yep.
And maybe maybe I'll be alive, maybe I won't by the time this rolls around. But I do think it's an important time to just start revlogging, because as much as people say like I'm tired of watching like the at-home workouts, I'm tired, like this stuff, like what's going on right now, it's like it's human history, man. You know, and I've always looked at my vlogs as a way of like it's my own little scrapbook, like personal scrapbook.
Love that.
So I think people just need folks to be like, hey, everything's gonna be okay, you know, and we're all like working with what we have, and then just the other part that this is times we live in. It's like we should document this. So I hope to post something up for my people real soon.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Alberto, and thank you guys for listening. We will catch you all soon. So I'm Steve Hall, founder of Revive Stronger and a coach of Revive Stronger.
My name is Pascal Flor. I'm the co-owner of Revive Stronger and also a coach, of course.
Revive Stronger has probably been going solidly for 3 years, roughly about 3 years.
Revive Stronger, to me, it is becoming kind of my child, my foster child. It's the gathering and getting together of like-minded people.
We've been expanding the coaching team, which is helping us help more people, but each coach can only help a certain number of people.
Right now, it's all over the place. We have YouTube, we have Facebook, we have Instagram, but there isn't that community aspect behind that.
And so the next step for us is developing a membership site.
So basically, we want to create a family and a community that is then benefiting from another.
A really cool community for people within our little niche is going to be a website.
They will get early access to our podcast.
You can access us, ask us questions.
The community aspect, we have a forum there. You can ask questions, but also you can log your journey.
There's also going to be courses on there.
Courses, presentations on different topics. Discount of past seminar footage. We will log our journey as well. We'll start vlogging.
We're going to have documentaries.
Our entire athletic journey. Furthermore, they get access to an exercise video library.
The exercises that we love for hypertrophy and maximizing hypertrophy, we're going to go through those in depth, telling you how to execute them.
We kept them concise and also mobile friendly so that you can watch them in between your sets.
I'm super excited to grow this community. The amount of value that we're going to be delivering is huge. And I'd love you to be part of it.
You will get so much out of that.
I'll see you inside.